Hey, welcome back to Mocktails with Marina. I'm your host, Marina, and today we're diving into a story that beautifully illustrates what this movement is really about: healing, wholeness, and creating safe, vibrant spaces without the booze. I'm joined by Becky Moreno, founder of Unity SoBar and Unity Recovery Solutions. Becky's journey from addiction to advocacy is raw, powerful, and full of purpose. So, whether you're sober, sober curious, or just wellness minded, you're going to want to hear this one. So, let's go ahead and get right to it. Thank you so much for being here today, Becky.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I am so thankful that you are here because you have such a beautiful story to tell and you have so many cool things going on. So I just want to dive right in and go ahead and give the people what they're here for, which is let's start with your backstory, right? Can you take us back to the moment when you realized that alcohol is like not the thing for you and that may have inspired you to start the businesses that you have now?
So there were several life-changing moments before I decided to put the booze down forever and for good, and when I was able to do that. But in about 2018, I had a very traumatic end to a very domestically violent marriage, and that set me on a course for coping with the trauma through alcohol. And I crossed that line somewhere. We talk about it in recovery a lot. I myself am in recovery, so we talk about it a lot where we cross that invisible line from hard drinker to alcoholic who cannot stop on their own. And I struggled for 2 years. I was in a recovery program. I went to a treatment facility and I still struggled off and on. I would get a few months sober and then I'd relapse and drink again and get a few months sober. And I changed my location. I moved several times and finally ended up back in my hometown around my family and got connected with a really supportive recovery community. And that's where I was able to ditch the booze July 15th of 2020 for good. And in that, I had to find me a little job and get me a little start life back over, so to speak, because I had felt like I had lost so much in those years, but mostly lost myself. And so, in getting connected with the recovery community, I also found a supportive group of women that were entrepreneurs in our local small rural town that encouraged me to find a safe space because it was during COVID. And I started asking around, being curious what there was to do in our little town that didn't involve drinking. And pretty soon the answers became evident. There wasn't a whole lot outside of that. There was not a real big health and wellness movement in my area. Whereas I was seeing on Instagram other areas like New York and these other things about sober bars and non-alc spaces, and I was very curious. And I have a unique background in balsamics and olive oils, and I watched master mixologists from five-star restaurants and bars use these ingredients in these very high-end cocktails at one point in my life. And so I thought, why couldn't we combine this new movement that I was seeing with my little background that I had and bring something unique to this little community? And it has turned into, over the years, this vibrant third space, so to speak, where it's all about health and wellness, and we talk about recovery and the different ways people come to be alcohol free in that space.
This is so cool. Tell us, where are you? And is there anything at all even remotely near you? I know you said nothing in your town, but even within a couple hundred miles.
There is not anything like us. We are in the southeastern corner of New Mexico. We're Hobbs, New Mexico, and we're right on the state line of New Mexico and Texas. So we're actually closer to a lot of major cities in Texas. There are more and more places with non-alcoholic options on their menus that go beyond the Shirley Temple or the orange juice spritzer, things like that. But we are the closest thing to, actually, we are a zero proof bar.
This is so exciting and so cool to see, especially because oftentimes people are so concerned, like they have this dream, this calling in their heart to start something new. And they might be in a rural place that doesn't have a lot of people, or not even just that, maybe there are people who feel culturally different than the idea that you have. But what I love about everything that you've set up is that never deterred you. And in fact, that was the thing that pushed you forward. So I would love to hear a story of the early days, like literally like the planning and then the first like 90 days of opening your bar. What was that like?
So it was kind of a slow process. My boss at the time, she was innovative. She is innovative still, but she was kind of on the front lines of bringing what was happening in the big cities like Dallas, New York, Phoenix, things like that, to our town and really seeing how each of us could work together with each other's ideal client base. For example, we would have like a candle maker and a jewelry maker. So one person wasn't necessarily the whole thing, but she brought together all these artists and makers. So my husband, who is also in recovery, had always wanted to own a bar. And obviously, being in recovery, owning an alcoholic bar is not an option for us. And this idea kind of came to life. So we started actually in this little boutique, this third space that's kind of, it's called The Collective at Salty Frog now, and the bar is inside there. And we had someone build us a little pop up bar and we hauled it to little farmers markets. We did backyard barbecues. We did tastings at the shop, introducing people to just the idea of drinking non alcoholically or a mocktail that's more complex it was difficult at first to get it out there, and we did that for about a year. It was all the nights and weekends, figuring out how we get our licenses and how we, if we're supposed to be a mobile bar or, health certificates and things like that. And ultimately we did enough private events where our name got out there, and now we're able to be in the shop full time and have a full seating area where you can come in and have a beverage with us. So
Wow. It's beautiful to me to see how the story kind of lays itself out over time, right? You probably didn't even picture where you are today 5, 10 years ago, right? I feel like it's a lot of us entrepreneurs in this space were like, we had no idea we were capable of any of these things.
I call myself an accidental entrepreneur a lot.
Yeah.
I have 30 plus years in sales and marketing background in different various arenas, and had always kind of thought I could do this. Different in different facets of business. And it came to fruition in this market. It was absolutely 100% self-serving. I joke too, because I wanted a space where I could go, but the theory behind that was in my drinking time where I remember it being fun. There was people that I was surrounded with that were also enjoying drinking, probably more than a moderate drinker. And as I moved to the smaller community and started creating this, putting this out there, even just talking about it, I found that it's almost like that if you build it, they will come philosophy. Like it had never existed, so people didn't know it was out there. So a lot of still of what we do is just telling our story over and over and over again of why the space is here in the first place.
That's beautiful. And a very important note here, being your own target demographic obviously has its pros, right? Because when you're doing research, all you have to do is start in your own journal. And I feel like
Absolutely.
so many people in this space, like those of us that are passionate, that aren't just doing the money grab,
Yeah.
absolutely are so connected, which kind of, makes me curious. How'd you choose your name, Unity SoBar?
So my husband has been attached to the name Unity. He's been sober a little bit longer than I have, and really has had his own story in sobriety, and really was able to embrace how we cannot accomplish anything alone. but together collectively as a community, there's so much, it's limitless, so long as we're praying in the right direction, and we're taking those steps, and really about helping the next person who's struggling, whether it be in business or with their own sobriety. We that was his passion name, and I was attached to SoBar because I thought it was really cutesy. So Unity SoBar was born.
Oh, beautiful. So you start just looking for a job, and it turns into this beautiful business, this beautiful Unity So Bar. And then the story doesn't even stop there. Then what did you do? You went ahead and opened up Unity Recovery Solutions. Tell us about that.
We did. We founded that as well. So as I was getting sober, I'm very fortunate. I had the support and the love of my family and my friends still cheering me on, knowing that that wasn't always who I was, and that wasn't what I was meant to do, is kind of just throw myself into that alcoholic misery. And I was on the verge of losing all of that. But I still had people lifting me up in my early days of sobriety. And I started looking around our community and not seeing a whole lot of women that were succeeding in our programs, in our 12-step meetings, or I'd see them come in and out, knowing that they were going back out into the dangerous world and coming back in. And I started looking around. I started asking the questions. We do have a very successful men's sober living program here in our town that's been in operation for 25 years and going strong. And I thought, why don't we have something for women? I've always been real female driven, female supportive. I've had lots of females mentor me over the years. So it was just kind of already in my soul to do that. And we did encounter a lot of opposition, saying a women's recovery home, they've tried it in the past and it wouldn't work, and all of these things. So this is where the real like blood, sweat, and tears came in. Building the bar was the fairly easy part. This was, reading about tax code, so I didn't go to jail for tax fraud, being a nonprofit, setting that up. This was the grassroots effort for sure. We had a lot of community members on board with us. We definitely had a lot of God involved in it too. Otherwise, it would not be successful at all. But we recognized a need, we prayed about it, and then we took action. We said this is what we're looking at. We don't have a treatment center in our rural community either, and so my husband had always wanted to open a treatment center, and I thought, wow, that's some pretty lofty goals with what a treatment center entails. Both of us have been in those facilities before, so just knowing the scope of professionalism, down to the facility itself, a building, what that would look like was almost overwhelming. So we kind of looked around and said, what if we just started small, where the first immediate need that we noticed, and the community started coming together, and God started weaving his ways, and the stars started to align, and we secured a house, and it was almost like this house was built for us to have women looking to get and stay sober. And we're one of that. We've been in operation for going on 3 years now, and we have the capacity to hold 6 women. And we've had several graduates. We're a long-term program, 12 months, 18 months, or 2 years, because we believe that if women get that foundational sobriety and support, then we help set them up for lifelong success.
What a beautiful story. I am so happy to hear that. Number one, just because something seems so difficult, I know tax code is something that, like, just saying those words is going to make someone's eye twitch out there. And it's going to, like, I think it made mine. Like, it's one of those things that even when you've been doing it for a long time, like, there's always going to be an excuse for something that seems so insurmountable to get through. And I love that you lean into faith in these moments. I feel like that's something that I honestly haven't heard enough of in the non-alc space, which is like wild to me.
Yes.
So I would love to hear more from you about those tough moments of getting like opening up and figuring out how everything was supposed to work. So, for example, you're trying to get everything so that your first people can come in and stay. Maybe you're just maybe you're about a couple weeks away from your first person being able to stay. What what kinds of like walk me through a day in your life on how you not only like I'm not talking the logistics of setting it up, but like for you, like how did you ensure that no matter how overwhelmed you were, you didn't allow it to push you to a place of a trigger or it didn't allow you to lose sight of your mission? Like how did you like again, walking in the day of your life, what did it look like to be grounded?
A lot of it started in those last moments that I took my last drink, right? Remembering I have two daughters. I am fortunate enough to have an amazing bonus family that I married into. That's what my husband and I call our kids. We're just a unit today, right? And that doesn't work unless there's God right in the middle of all of it. And I say God in the broad spectrum for anybody who does get offended or anything like that. I don't want anybody to be deterred from any type of recovery program just because that's my personal journey. I make sure everyone knows that this is my story, and I know there's so many stories out there of different ways people get to a place where they're not in a hopeless state of mind and body anymore. And a lot of it went back to that. Like, I didn't want anyone to ever feel that way I felt on that day that I said, I surrender. I can't do this on my own anymore. I need the help of the people that have done it before. I need the help of God. I need the help of my family. And really ask for that help and really embrace what they were teaching me and really trying to help me see about the real problem, because what I was taught was that, the alcohol, the drugs, the whatever else, the gambling, the shopping, the food, all of that isn't even about the actual substance. It's about some inner thing that I'm missing, and it was that connection to a higher power. So I always went back to that, right? Like, if God didn't bring me all the way here, He didn't do it that to drop me on my feet, and really leaning into a lot of personal development too. Like, what is this trying to teach me? Why did I have to start over from ground zero, so to speak? And there were the days and the times that I struggled with the self-worth of it all, that a lot of us in recovery, or even trying to just be sober curious, I think, when people are realizing that alcohol isn't serving them and that mental health aspect. So we all struggle with that. Why me? Why did I get chosen for this mission? And who told me? Because I can promise you, 10 years ago, when things were still maybe okay in my life, not great, but not rock bottom, I never thought that I would be in the non-alc space, one, in the nonprofit space, two, and in the wellness industry of helping other women succeed. And the definition of success has changed for me so much over what it used to be. It used to be bank account, or what I drove, or where I lived, or a lot of outward status. And today the success is inward. It's not only my recovery and my sobriety, but did I get to help anybody today, and was I useful to God and to my fellows today? How am I being of service? Am I getting to mentor other small businesses? Am I getting to mentor other women looking in the sober curious space? What I have found personally in the non-alc space is a lot of support. A lot of us, um, I say women, but I know we're not just, the non-out space is not just women, but I feel like when we tie it to the personal development space, a lot more of us are in that healing the whole person space. And sometimes it starts with, a drink at the bar, and sometimes it starts with sharing a story. But I feel like a lot of women that I had reached out to on Instagram, because I just started reaching out to people too, like, hey, how'd you do that? And people were really receptive to that, to kind of like, hey, can I borrow this idea? And they're like, yes, please do, because we don't know what we're doing either. So being on the forefront of it before it became this $1 billion projected to be $1 billion industry, uh, was it's kind of cool to know that you're on the ground level of something, but also attaching it to such a personal mission. It's been really cool.
Yeah, measuring success not just on those P&Ls, right? Like there's so many other indicators, and I feel like impact is something that like people say they want to focus on, but then when they start business, they can't help but to kind of get lost in the sauce, lost in the details of, okay, well, I'm looking at the numbers and the day-to-day tasks and the things I need to do to make it work instead of, okay, what's the one thing I can do today to help someone like
Mhm.
in need, right? And we can all be guilty of it. Even those of us who like live in our passion, it's very easy to fall back into a habit of worry if we're not like constantly aware. I love that you also mentioned that like how personal of a journey being an entrepreneur is. Like it opens you up so deeply. Like we find that our clients, the thing that they're avoiding is always the thing that moves the needle. And to
Mhm.
me, I'm always like, yeah, because at the end of the day, it's so personal. It's the personal reason you didn't do that. It's not, you can say you were busy, you can say you had other meetings and other things came up, but at the end of the day, when you are the business owner, you get to choose the order of operations for the most part. And so when you're speaking on this, I just think that this is a point that hits home with a lot of people because, you know, yeah, there's a lot of details that are easy to get caught up in, but when you're focused on the heart, it makes it a little bit easier. So that being said, I'd love to hear a story of just a lovely, amazing interaction you've had at your bar and how maybe you've seen their life change.
So our before the bar moved in, when I just started, I had this little part-time job being a little sales associate, and I have a career background. So having the being humbled by having to start over was, in retrospect, probably one of the best things that ever happened, because I was able to see this space and value it for what it was. People would come in and they would feel broken, or they would just be having a rough day, and my boss would allow them their space to vent, cry, rant if they had to. And it was really a guilt and shame free space, like an open space. So she taught me a lot about what that looked like for us. And I keep saying about our community because, again, we're very rural. So there's not a whole lot of places that encourage expanding your mind and personal growth. We are a blue collar place, and so there's a lot of focus on getting the job done. We get the job done, we go home, and we have dinner with our families. And while that's great, the seeds were being planted a long time ago when I started there, so that I could have these amazing days at the bar when a stranger comes in and stumbles upon us, and we start talking about what the space is, and they walk in and they say, I feel different when I come in here. What is that? And we get to say, what, I'm not sure what you're feeling, but it's an openness, it's a welcomeness, it's an invitingness for you to come in and tell your story. So I get to hear, I mean, there's the one, I have a story of a woman who came in and told about why she doesn't drink, because of her mother. Her mother was an alcoholic and did not seek out help and seek out recovery, and never was able to find that for herself, and died. And so she seeks out that third space to comfort her past. So she keeps coming back as a place of hope for, that it doesn't have to happen. And that wasn't everybody's story. Or we hear the stories of the people who are just, simply looking for a better state of mind, realizing that alcohol is a poison, it's a toxin, and they don't want to do that to their bodies anymore. And then there's people that come in that are indignant. We've been fed this lie about this, supposedly great thing, but for the most part, I think it's the personal stories that I get to hear with people who have either struggled with their own demons in substance use, or have had a family member that have struggled with that, and the fact that I'm vocal, my husband is vocal, we're very open about our recoveries, open about what we've struggled with, is refreshing, because I think it's been such a stigma for so long that when people get to come in and share, hey, I've had my struggles, I may not be like you, quote unquote, but I, had this happen at one time, or I had this tragedy or something. So just getting to know people one on one, that is my favorite thing about being in the bar, is that just getting to hear everyone's personal stories and their journeys.
Yeah, there's nothing that quite gets you out of your head or gets you out of that imposter syndrome or any of those other things that keep you from being present, like connecting with someone on that deep level. And that depth is what I think is really necessary in this industry because otherwise what's the difference between, a non-alc bar and just like a soda bar, like a soda shop? Like, like there has to be that feeling, that indescribable je ne sais quoi,
Yeah.
like thing about your business. And that's beautiful. So on that note, non-alc is booming. Like we just mentioned, it's about to hit $1 billion. I think I just saw an article that said by 2035, it's projected to already hit 5 billion, which is like bonkers. So that being said, as you know, from where you're sitting, what do you like envision the next 5, 10 years to be like? Like, take that question as you will, whether it's about the drinks, the vibe, how you name it.
For us personally, I know that we would love to see the bar expand just because of the philosophy behind it. We have children in their 20s that don't drink, or what that support our mission of what we do, and they say this would be great in this town, or this would be great in a big city, and while we think that is great, we're still in that early infancy, under 5 years, where we're still doing the grunt work, right? We're still going to pick up the supplies. We're still sorting through the recipes. We're still doing our images. We're still doing menu creation and things like that. It's not something we've grown that big yet. So I would love to see our bar become in more of a younger demographic, because we do have a lot of younger clients, customers that are coming in that are choosing that. So I'd like to see them have that as an option long term, that it is becoming so mainstream that we're seeing it at grocery stores, non alcoholic brands. Um, I have still had the dream of being a full non-alc bottle shop. So we're mini bottle shop, mini bar, so we're still kind of growing in both those aspects. So we would love to see something like that, like what we're offering, kind of expand into some of our larger areas around here.
Yeah, this hybrid model I think is so cool because back when people were just starting to open bottle shop, I feel like bottle shops started in 2020. Non-alc
Mhm.
bars definitely started before that. The first Kava bar was in Florida in 2002. Took a while to kind of catch on. But all of that being said, it's like you don't have to do just one thing, right? Like you can, if you're also, for example, a ballerina, if you're listening out there and you're like, I want to have a ballet sober theater, and where people can come and when instead of getting like cool, like you can just combine all the things you want and turn like and to me, like I love that is right like where your mind went because that's I want to see some like weird third spaces. I want to see. Ooh, it would be cool if someone wanted to revitalize like some like not skate parks. What am I thinking? Like roller skating rinks, and then just put a non-alc bar in there. What other crazy things would you like to see out there?
That would be super fun. We do a lot of events, more and more. We're getting booked to do a lot of private events because of that, right? Their lectures, or their weddings and things like that, where people are like, no, we don't want that option at all on the table. So doing what we do at the shop already as a collective, we are so open to any ideas. If someone came to us and said, "Hey, can we put a roller skating rink in the parking lot on a Saturday?" I'd be, yes, sign us up. There's so many fun things. So we partner with like for example, one of the things we do in spring, we partner with a local flower farm and we start using botanicals in the drinks in the spring and summer. And so we have flower workshops. So we're just
Aw.
curating one this afternoon, and we were working on our first one for the season. We'll do things like that. One of the things that I think that people that is a misconception about our direction, we are definitely for the grown up. We are not the, and I say grown up. I will be 49 and I don't feel grown up, but our mocktails are a little bit more complex. They do have diverse ingredients. We use non-alcoholic spirits. We've spent a lot of time sampling, tasting, testing, inquiring about organic ingredients, and so we care about what goes into our drink. So we're not just a Sprite and orange juice type of drink. So people that are inquiring about kids events and things for children, we kind of leave that to some of the soda makers or some of the juice carts that are in town, or food trucks that specialize in fun snow cones and things like that. We're definitely marketing for a more refined palate.
Ooh, this is such an important topic that I don't know has actually been discussed much on this podcast yet, which is exciting. So let's talk about the fact that like non-alc in general does not mean that children can drink all these things, right? Because some of them are incredibly functional.
Yes,
Some of
yes.
them have ingredients that like the serving size is just not right for them. And there's so many things to consider here. And then you can also consider also, for example, like people who are pregnant, they can't consume most of the NA products, honestly, because of
Mhm.
how many different functional ingredients are in everything. So when we talk about like marketing and who can be where, it's really important. So what to you defines a non-alc third space that is adult that like it may not be appropriate for minors to be hanging out in?
So, in our bar, just because of our background, we don't do any CBD or THC beverages. There are a few places in town that have those in their lounges, and that is the demographic that they cater to, whether they're using it medicinally, casually. Um, and so we kind of also have an understanding with them that we don't step on their toes. And again, that's extremely personal because I've had mentors say that that's foolish on the business front to not carry those products, just because they're considered non-alc, right? It's alternative, but it's something for me that I couldn't put forth into the universe with my background. So for us, curating our balsamic based drinks are for everyone. We use a balsamic, and then we use florals, we use vegetables sometimes, even just depending on what it is. So those are our base bar options, right? That is what you can order off the menu. Now, as far as the things we offer in the bottle shop, those are, that people do have to be careful with those. I'm not opposed to adaptogens. It's almost in every single product we carry of any type. I'm a huge proponent of ashwagandha. Everybody should take it. But again, we do have to educate the public. And I think that that's probably been our biggest challenge, is educating the general public, because I was the general public at one time, right? I didn't know. I had to be educated. I had to do my own research. So breaking it down into those small digestible chunks of information that they can process quickly and for themselves. Like, is this a right move for me if I'm sober curious? Am I abstaining from everything? I've had people in recovery also not participate in the bar at all because they said it's bad for their recovery, which I respect so much. So it all depends on where the client is coming from, the customer. So again, get to delve into these questions individually with them and get to know them and what their journey. And some of them are like, I just don't drink. I just want a fun place to hang out and with a cool vibe and cool music, and they're welcome as well. But they do most of them get an education of some sort when they come in.
I think it's cool that you have made the decision to keep certain products out of your shop because you know, we're at the day and age too where anybody can order anything online. Like you can get anything anywhere. It's not a big deal. So why do people actually come to you? Why do they come into your place? Because of the connection, because of the moment, because of the curation. You've spent countless hours figuring out what drinks are good, what are bad, what to carry, what not. Like there is a level of expertise here that, again, whenever we're looking at all of our new clients, the ones that enter the discovery phase, they want to open. So they're like, yeah, I'm just going to do everything. So then they start to realize they're like, oh, like I actually should curate to a specific audience because if you're trying to speak to everyone, you're speaking to no one, right? Because there are going to be people who would never ever enter your shop if they even knew that that was in there because they would be worried. So I think that's a very responsible business decision to make, especially because there's already people in town doing it. So it's not like you're like people are like, come on, like I have nowhere else to get it. Like they can go there, and that's what makes you unique, which is so important. I think that decision's really great.
And I think it's really cool to, again, living in a small town has its rewards on a lot of levels, and where a lot of us business owners just kind of respect that about each other. Like, that particular owner and I get along great. There's no shame, there's no hate
Yeah.
on what either one of us is doing. She's serving that product. That is the base of her business, and her story is also personal, right? And I know that story. So living in a small rural community, we get to know that about each other. But at the same time, there is only so many people we can reach. Even if I'm on all the social media platforms, I can be standing out on the street corner with a sandwich board, and there's still only a number of people I'm going to be able to reach. So diversifying, but also being able to clearly state that this is our value, this is our ethics, this is what we stand for. Again, all stemming purely selfishly. Like, I just want a really nice drink in a really fun place and that looks really pretty and it's well crafted and complex.
Yeah. I feel like even though for those listening out there who enjoy Bar Rescue, John Taffer going around yelling at people, big fan. That show teaches me so much all the time. But But point of that is often in that show, they always say, hey, the owner, it's a big red flag if the owner hangs out in the establishment. And I think that there's a very important distinction to make right here for non-alc versus alc because oftentimes non-alc people think about it as what it's not. They think, oh, it's just not alcohol, so it has everything else, so it should be a normal bar just sans the alcohol, right? But in reality there's an entire cultural shift because it depends on, I want to say it depends on the ownership, right? Some owners definitely shouldn't be in their bar if they're actively figuring out how to be a leader in ways. You don't want to be sneezing energetically on your people in your community, so to speak, right? Like you want to uplift them with positive vibes. But if you want to be an in-touch business owner in the non-alc space with your community, you really do have to be in there listening to all the people. So my question for you is, where is your boundary so that you still have your cup full because you have to interact with a lot of people. You're hearing heavy stories. And you have another business that literally supports people through the active struggle. So, what do you do to kind of protect your space in order to be able to show up every day?
So, I go through these highs and lows with that, right? I feel like sometimes there's good boundary setting, and then sometimes the post-it notes with the to-dos are everywhere, and I'm just overwhelmed. But what authentic and very intentional prayer have done is brought the right people to my teams on both sides of that. First, a supportive partner is key. Like I've seen it all over, if you don't have a supportive partner, then you just might as well not have a partner, and
Mhm.
my husband has been supportive. I've taken some of his dreams and turned them into our dreams. And then we've turned this one thing into, we've scaled the having a treatment center all the way back to starting out at sober living and realized that in itself is the emotionally and energetically draining part
Yeah.
of the work. I have an amazing team of girls at the bar, women, excuse me. But I always feel like when I say girls, it sounds like I'm demeaning them. But really, when we get together, we're all just girls, that have taken on, they each have their own business as well under the same roof. So we all care and nurture for each other's businesses in the same way. And so, really bringing them into the creative fold and allowing them to get behind the bar and make the drinks and mix play with the ingredients. And I'm not looking at, did you use 4 lemons today? If you used 4 lemons and you've created something magical, then we need 4 lemons for every drink going forward, really just allowing that space, allowing them to take things home and mix at home and come back and bring that to the bar, and being really receptive to the flow of that, and not being something where it is my way or the highway. This, I cannot function if I'm not in a flow state with my teams on both sides. And sometimes it, comes back and bites us in the butt if I'm trying to be in control and manage all the things instead of just taking my hands off some of the situations and saying they're going to be fine. Like, let them. And also, we hang together. We do things together. We read, what book are you reading? What project are you pursuing right now? We really take an interest in each other's lives outside of that workspace too.
I love the connection is just the center point of everything for you. Like you are not afraid, like there might be unknowns out there, but you're not afraid of asking for help, reaching out, talking to people. And this is so important because, recovery always happens when you are in a space of healing, when you're in connection. Addiction is what happens when you're alone. And
Mhm.
some of what I see in some business owners, it's like, cool, you got sober from the substance. So proud of you, so happy. This is something to celebrate. However, you just change that addiction into your work and your business, and you're still doing it alone. You're still micromanaging your staff, or maybe you haven't hired them yet, and you're just
Yeah.
like working gosh, 80 hours a week plus. So I'm curious, was it always easy for you to reach out and connect with people, or did you have a struggle with that at first, and how did you overcome it?
I've always been a pretty social person. Again, my background is sales and marketing, and I've done that my whole career in various forms. So, talking to people has never been the problem. Selling a product, also not the problem. What has come up for me in this journey of self discovery and really getting to the core pieces of what was really hurting, that I allowed the alcohol to take over to the point of soothing that trauma, was that I don't feel like selling myself is where my talents lie, but the story is so personal. The story has to be told because it's not my story of how I overcame anything. It's the story of how I've been able to not only put the drink and the drug or whatever substance, whatever it is, but also step out of my way, because there was an ego, there was a pride, there was a shame, a guilt, all these other, buzzwords, but they're important buzzwords because they were encompassing my whole existence. So, peeling those away layer by layer, just on the route to the journey to the soul, to the self discovery, things like that. Um, Being able to now say, yes, I am the face of this brand. I mean, we all know as entrepreneurs, we're the not just the face, but we're the we're the bill payer, we're the grocery getter, we're the we scrub the toilets just like everyone else. We do all the
Mhm.
things. But when we get to go out and speak publicly about it, this is the brand. This is the why behind the brand. And I think that the important thing is that I have a solid why. There is a definite solid why. You talked earlier about, I didn't get in it because there was a money grab, or I wasn't an investor looking for a place to dump a bunch of money on what was the next trend that was happening. I mean, I was doing it for self preservation mostly. My husband and I was working part time. We took a little personal chunk of money, and we were dating at the time. He just invested in me.
Aw.
So we took that little chunk of money and said, "Hey, this is what we're going to do with it now, whatever the direction is that this goes." And so, also in my all of my sales experience, I've always been taught, any classes I've taken, any growth classes I've taken, we move the needle forward slowly, right? Because it is so personal to me that if we were to jump ahead to that 5-year dream, right? And all of a sudden be franchised in all these places, that it would take away some of the original love that I have for it, and it would become institutional almost, and nothing against going to a chain restaurant or a chain bar. I every time, I mean, one of my favorite things to do, we love to travel, and I love to go to non-alc bars. So right now in the market, there's all of these apps and people that you can subscribe with that help you find the mocktails in your town, and I'm on all of them. It's just
Yay.
nobody travels to our neck of the woods if they're but really looking for that quaint place. It's really made me have a heart for small business again, rather than this big corporate business that I used to value so much.
Mm. The value of romanticizing that beginning phase of business is something like I feel that needs to be repeated
Yeah.
because oftentimes we're just so busy being like, oh, like let's just trudge through this and it's hard. My husband and I were talking about this morning because last year like we spent so much extra time outside of dealing with like working with our clients. We were building all of this infrastructure of all of our like online programs and like all these offers and like and building databases of literally basically we're trying to download our brains and be like, okay, how do we put everything that we've ever learned in this entire industry not only into programs but into databases that we can pull from. So we
Mhm.
spent so much time doing that like I couldn't sleep. Like it wasn't panic attacks keeping me up, but it was something similar. Like I'd just be like trying to fall asleep and then I'd see the thing. And point of that is at this point in our business, there's a lightness
Yeah.
because we no longer have to do a lot of that. We have a bunch of base clients that guarantee that everything's paid for in life, which is like the beautiful place. But point of this is I remember last year trying to like enjoy those moments of pain because I was like, you know what? These are going to be the lessons that people are going to ask about eventually. Like because all of us, if you think about I always like the high school metaphor, we all start out as freshmen and we look at the seniors and they look so big. And then all it takes is 4 years and now you're the big dog and there's these tiny little freshmen coming in. And the roles change very quickly in life, like quicker than we think if we are on a forward motion, right? Like if we're
Yeah.
growing, we're going to be graduating through these levels pretty quickly. So it's kind of like if we're not taking notes, we can like end up repeating a grade.
Yes. Very much. Yes.
So I love that you bring that up here to just enjoy this part. Because, yeah, your goal is to eventually be able to, of course, you want to be able to automate certain revenue streams to be able to like do other things and enjoy other parts of life. But you also want to keep the heart and soul in your business. So I feel like that is an eternal balancing act, no matter what phase of business you're in. But thank you for highlighting that one today because I feel like that
Mm.
one's difficult for some people.
It's I think I get to apply a lot of the principles that I've learned through my recovery journey into business as well. And a lot of it is that, trust the process, which a lot of people cringe at that saying. But when you're on the other side of that challenge that you thought you've written out the plans and then the plans didn't work, so you crumpled up the paper and tossed it away and went back to the drawing board, and you've tried the different ways, and then when you get to the end successful result, successful looks like whatever it looks like at that point in time, and you say, yes, I've done that, but here's what I learned through doing that. That is the real knowledge. That is the real power, right? Whether it's, me trying to curate a menu for botanicals, or whether it's me trying to figure out um, why I allowed this trauma to happen in my life. It can be this really big thing in personal, and it can be this really big thing in business. But being able to turn that pain into the message of, this is the how I did it, for
Yes.
someone else to, if they're willing to sit down with me, same thing that you're doing right now. We get to talk about, this is the struggles that we faced. This is the how of how we overcame it. And there's a lot of times people will sit down with me and go, you really did that the hard way, girl.
And that's why I'm here to help you do it the easy way.
Exactly, exactly. Like, wow, you really put in your personal money. You didn't need to do that. There's all these forums that you can, or you really thought you had to do that alone. Again, it goes back to the community part
Hmm.
of the core of it, right? Like, it's me trying to do everything on my own when really I can't do anything on my own. It's putting the heads together. It's the collaboration. It's the collective coming together of like-minded people, coming together to say, hey, let's all be a success, let's all move forward together, versus like, I'm gonna succeed on the backs of other people or anything like that. But it's that whole process of, of going from, me, I can do it alone, to I need people. I need faith, I need my humans, I need to look around for what the universe is putting in front of me at the same time.
Beautiful words. Thank you so much, Becky, for everything today. Do you have any final words or messages or plugs that you'd like to share with us?
Well, always, if anybody is driving through, because most people just drive through this neck of the woods. Again, we're in the southeast corner of New Mexico. So when people think of New Mexico, they think of the adobe, Taos skiing and things like that. And that is not us. We're in the desert down here, but we've created a little oasis. It is a little piece of heaven in this neck of the woods. So if anybody's ever around, please, my name and my number are out there also for anybody that is struggling with addiction and any type of recovery. I'm always here to listen. I have a bank of resources not only in West Texas and southeastern New Mexico, but the recovery community is far reaching and everybody's a phone call away. So if anyone out there is struggling, please don't hesitate. There are people that want to help. We do understand. It's not, you're not alone. You're not alone, and your story matters.
Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing everything, Becky.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. And to everyone else, thank you so much for tuning in to Mocktails with Marina. I hope Becky's story left you feeling inspired and reminded that this movement is about so much more than just saying no to alcohol. It's about saying yes to your health, your joy, and your community. If you want to connect with Becky or check out Unity SoBar and Unity Recovery Solutions, all the links are waiting for you in the episode description. Don't forget to follow, share, and leave a review if this episode moved you. We're building this sober world together. As always, if you need anything, just let me know.